Hi guys, I wanted to make at least one more video just to show you how to build your Felix blanket. So how to layer on blocks to make it taller, and then also go into some more details about adding on the middle panels and the left panels to adjust it to the width that you would like. I also just wanted to say before I get into this, thank you to everybody who has subscribed to my YouTube channel. I feel really touched that so many of you have done that, and I wanted to just let all of you know, not just to the people who have subscribed. If you have any questions at all about this blanket, if there's something else I can do to demonstrate a technique or to help clear something up for you, please feel free to reach out and let me know, and I would be happy to try to put something together. And it doesn't just have to be about this Felix blanket either. If you have a question about one of my other patterns or just some other kind of technique or something lingering on your mind, please feel free to let me know, like I said, and I'll do my best to try to help. So to get into the Felix blanket, I'm going to start off with showing you this piece here that I put together. So in my other videos, I talk about how to make this odd shape here, and then I also talk about how to layer on this first block, how to do the floating increases, and then I have another video that talks about how to join so that you have the starting panel. You would not have this orange piece here, but I went ahead and attached it so that I could just show you all of these things in one video and not have to spend a lot of time crocheting. So you would not have this, but after you watch those other videos, you would have your odd shape, this piece, and then this triangle, and they would be joined. So from here, you're going to be layering a left block and a right block, and you're just going to repeat doing that as many times as you need until you get the blanket as tall as you want. All of your left side blocks from this point on will be made exactly the same. All of your right side blocks from this point on will be made exactly the same. And again, like I said, to save time, I went ahead and started this first left side block, and I hope that you can see that I went ahead and joined. This was my first stitch right here. It's the same stitch that I slip stitched into when I joined these two pieces together. So then for the left side blocks, you always want to work 6 rows of 12. So you would start in this first block and work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So make sure you have 9, that you don't skip a block up here. And then you'll do 3 of the floating increases, which I demonstrated in an earlier video. And then you make the block to get the jagged edges the same way as this block before, and I did talk about that in an earlier video. But basically, when you get to the top of this block, you don't want to add something above it, so you'll do a chain 3 decrease to start your second row right here. And I talk about the decreases and increases in my C2C video if you're confused about how to do that. So then from here you would work 12 stitches down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And while you're making this 12th stitch, that's when you'll join to this side over here. And it's the same technique to join these two panels. You would work up 12 more stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Again, you don't want anything above this stitch, so you do the chain 3 decrease and come down 12 stitches. And on the 12th stitch, while you're making the 12th stitch, you join, and then you work up 12 stitches again. And again, you don't want anything above this block, so you'll do the chain 3 decrease to start here and come down, and that's where I am. So I'm on row 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I need to make 1, 2, 3 more blocks to complete this row. So I'm going to do that for you so that I can just review one more time about the join, and then I'll show you how to start the right side block. So I'm just going to make 2 CTC stitches by slip stitching into the next space, chaining 3, and making 3 double crochets. So I have one more block left to make, and I'm going to make it in this last loop right here. And while I make the stitch, I'm going to join it to this stitch over here. And like I said, I described this in more detail in my other joining video, but you just should be able to see hopefully that there's a little square gap here, and that's where your stitch will go. So I find it helpful when you go to make joins for your blocks. You might have to lay your work down just so that you can see and just make sure that you have that nice square pattern and there's a gap there for your last stitch to make sure you're joining in the correct place. So to make the join, slip stitch to start your last stitch, chain 3 to start your last stitch, and then slip stitch into the corner of that other block, and I do that in the chain 3 space. And then I just kind of fold my work and tuck that other block away so that I just have this chain 3 loop available to me, and I make my last 3 double crochets. So now I made the last stitch to fill in that block, and all that's left to do is to join it. And I like to join it in this little chain loop in the corner. So now that block is finished. And like I said, if you need to see more details about doing that, there's a video that I go over it in a little bit more depth. So you can just cut that and fasten off. So now that left side block is done, and every left side block you make until you get to the point where you want to square off the top will be made exactly like that. Now the right side block, you would want to start it in this stitch right here. And if you're right-handed like me, you need to turn your work. So you'll turn your work and then get your new color yarn and attach the new color yarn right here in the same stitch that you slip stitched into when you ended that previous block. And then you just go ahead and chain 3 and make 3 double crochets. So that's the first C to C stitch. And then you would continue working stitches all the way up the side. So I'll do a couple more. I'll stop here, but you would keep going. So these right side blocks, the stitch count each row will change a little bit because you're creating a straight edge, but every block on this side will be made the same way from start to finish. So you started in this first space and you'll make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches. And then we want to keep the straight edge, so you'll want to build a stitch on top of to keep that edge going. So you'll do an increase. Basically start the row by chaining 6 and making 3 double crochets and work your way back down. And you'll have 9 stitches this time when you come back down. So when you get right here, you'll have 1 more stitch to make. And this is again where I said it might be helpful sometimes to set your work down just so you can see. You would have your last stitch to be made here. Here's your little square gap, and here's the stitch you want to join to. So you would slip stitch in here, chain 3 to join, make your 3 double crochets, slip stitch here, and then maneuver out of this space by chaining 3 and slip stitching into the chain 3 loop so you can start the next row. And again, I go through all of that in that other video, so I don't want to take time doing it here. But then you would go back up 9 stitches for row 3, and then again you want to get, keep that straight edge, you want to work up, so you would do an increase and come down 10 stitches, and this time you would join here to this stitch and then work up 10 stitches, do an increase to add 1 and keep that straight edge, and then come down 1 more time and join to this stitch here, and then you would fasten off, and then this would be the last stitch you joined into, and when you turn your work you would start in that last stitch that you joined into to work up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches, do the 3 floating increases, and then continue making rows of 12. So hopefully that helps you layer on the blocks. Like I said, you would just keep repeating that until you get to the top, and you want to square off the top, and then that's a matter of just making decreases to get the straight edge, and that's all in the pattern. But if you are running into problems, let me know and I'll see what I can do to help. So I'm gonna now show you how to layer blocks on for the middle panel and how to get the blanket wider. So when you go, after you finish this panel and it's as tall as you want and you've squared off the top, you have a couple options. You can do a middle panel where you'll basically layer left and right side blocks, and you can do that as many times as you want, or you can just skip the middle panel and go straight to the left edge if you want a smaller blanket, like a baby blanket. So assuming you want to do a middle panel, you start off and you make another one of these pieces, the odd shape with the first block coming off of it, and it's exactly what I made to start this right panel, and I've outlined how to do that in other videos. So that piece is finished and you would set it aside, and then now you need to get this piece set up so that you're ready to start layering blocks. So the first thing you do is attach your new color yarn down here, and you work 5 stitches up, join, come down, increase, work 6 stitches up, join on the 6th stitch, come down, increase, and work 7 stitches up, join, and come down. And then you would change colors to work your second block. I'm going to do 1 row of the second block so I can show you a couple of things that look a little bit different and might cause you to stop and question yourself for a minute. So when you want to start your new color, you can choose to fasten this off and just attach a new color, or you can choose to change colors on the last stitch. And that's the method I do. So I removed one double crochet, I start my stitch, and then I complete the final yarn over with the new color. So you want to keep this straight edge going, so we need to build a block right here, which is going to mean we start with an increase, and then we work stitches up this side. So the increase is the chain 6 and the 3 double crochets in the chain. And I've said this in other videos, but I always make that increase stitch before I turn my work. So I haven't turned my work yet. So now I'm going to turn my work and start working C to C stitches. And like I said, I'm just going to do this one row so I can show you, because it looks a little bit different up in that area. And some of you might understand why that is, but I'll just make sure it's clear for everybody. So I'm just making regular C to C stitches by slip stitching, chaining 3, and making 3 double crochets. Oops. Oh my goodness, sorry guys. Try to go fast and that's not working. Okay, so I'm almost to my very last stitch of that orange color, and I'll stop there to show you. So that green block is where a couple things happened. One, you made floating increases. So the bottom of the stitch in those places is going to look a little different because that's where you chained 6 to make that loop. And then over here, the stitch is going to look a little different because this is where you chained 3 to do the decrease. So I don't know how well you can see this, but here's my stitch. Here's the bottom of my little loop that I made for the floating increase. And then I also have this loop on top of the stitch, which is a little unusual, but that's from where the decrease was made. And that's where it's important to make the chain 3 decreases, because you need these loops. Because I'm reaching this block and I need to make, I believe it's 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 stitches. So the last 3 are going to be crossing over this block, and it looks different because you have a chain 3 loop on top of the block, and that's where you made the decrease. So you'll come in there and make normal C to C stitches, but I just wanted to highlight to you that that does look a little different, and it might cause you to hesitate for a moment. And then the other thing I wanted to show you was when you go to join, again, it looks different and it's going to feel a little different, and it's because of that floating increase. but you do it the same way. So I'm to my last block, number 11, that I need to make. And again, this is where it's a good idea to just lay your work down so you can see that there's a little square shaped block right there. So I'm going to fill in my last stitch, and I need it to be touching at the corners. And this purple stitch is one where I did the floating increase. So I'll show you what I like to do for the join. So slip stitch and chain 3 like usual. And then for the join, I actually work into the little bump from the chain that's on the bottom side of that stitch. And then now I have my square, and I'm just going to move that purple piece away so I can make my 3 double crochets into the loop. And then for the final slip stitch, you just I kind of just imagine the corner is like right over here. So again, I just go into a couple loops and slip stitch right there. So then that's the start of that row. I still have to work 6 rows total. So this is where I would do the chain 3 slip stitch maneuver to get out of that trapped spot, which again is in the join video. And now my work is turned. I'll make 1 stitch. And I'm ready to start working back down. I would make 11 stitches back down, and when I got down here, I would want to grow this way, so I need to add a stitch. So I would do an increase, and then I would work up 12 stitches, and I would join in this spot up here, and then I would come down 12 stitches, and this would be row 4. And row 4 is the point where you join your 2 panels together. So that is exactly the same as you did in part 1, where you're coming down on row 4, and on the last stitch you join to the new panel, and then work up for row 5, and then come down for row 6 and join a second time. So that's the same. And then you would have your, assuming that I did that, pretending like I did that, you would have your 2 panels set up to go. And then you would start building left and right side blocks. The blocks on this side would be built exactly the same way as I demonstrated for this purple block. 6 rows of 12 stitches. You would work up 9 stitches, do 3 floating increases, and come down for 12, and you would attach every time you came back down to the middle. And then the right side blocks, once this white block was finished, we would be out over here. Oops, you can't see that. You would be out over here. So then you're going forward from there. Actually, maybe I'll show you on the blanket. So this blue block is the white block that I started working for you on this other piece that I didn't finish, so that I don't have to sit and crochet forever in front of you. So this blue block would be done. And when you go to make the next right side block, it's also going to be 6 rows of 12 stitches, because you'll do your 9 coming up this side and then the 3 to cross over. So 6 rows of 12 for both sides. So that's pretty easy to remember. And then the right side, you would be attaching at the top and then coming down and attaching at the bottom. So that's how the right side is different than the left side. And then the final thing to show you is that you would set up, you'd set up this right side, and that's where you could say, okay, I want to do a middle panel. So you would make one of these shapes and layer your blocks. When you finish this, and this is what I chose to do, you could make another middle panel. So you would just make another one of these and layer blocks again. Or you would make the left side panel. And like I said, you could just skip the middle panels altogether if you wanted. It's pretty customizable. But to start the left side, you just basically make a triangle that looks like this. It's 10 stitches tall, 10 stitches wide, and 10 on the diagonal. And then you would have this one here, and when you're coming down for row 4, you would join to this piece instead of this other piece. So I hope that clears up any questions anybody might have about how to make the blanket taller, how to make the blanket wider, how to customize it to your unique specifications, and then also just helps bring some awareness to that the stitches look a little bit different over here than what you were seeing before, and just to give you some clarity or peace of mind that you are doing it right. So I think that's about everything. Let me know, like I said, if you have any questions.